now live streaming on YouTube. So welcome to anyone watching us on YouTube. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat on Zoom, or you can put them in the chat on YouTube. And the questions on YouTube will be passed to us via our chat chair. So for those who don't know me, my name is Professor Clodagh Jenkins, and I'm Associate Director of the Centre for Teaching and Learning Economics at UCL. I'm also chair of this session, which I'm really excited to do with two colleagues, one who is Ramin from UCL Economics as well, and Christian Spielman from Bristol University, but really still part of our UCL family as well. So we're going to kick off by just asking maybe Ramin first to introduce himself and explain what he means by preparing or using asynchronous videos to engage students with their learning.
Hi, I'm Ramin. What I mean is that there are two types of videos I usually make. There are these short videos that are completely focused on one thing, and that's about explaining economic models. And I'm going to talk about this in detail. That's really my focus for this seminar. But other than short videos that are focused on models, I produce these long videos, 30, 35 minutes, as a pre-record for my lecture. And I've been producing videos. I've started producing videos since lockdown, basically.
So an old hand. Christian, do you want to introduce yourself and explain how you use videos for student learning?
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Christian Spielman. I'm a reader in economics education at Bristol University. I was at UCL, so I feel very. It's great to be back here. So I've been working with technology for quite a few years now, and at the very beginning, I used videos very much to kind of catch up if I didn't get my stuff through in a lecture or in a seminar. If I noticed I made a mistake and I thought like, oh, I have to reach out to my students again. And then I thought, wait a minute, this is actually working quite well. And more, I introduced videos in my actual teaching. In terms of flipping the classroom and producing short videos which facilitate learning and put some of the material out of the actual lecture or the seminar. So the kind of videos I want to talk about today is very much about videos with other people. So recording me in a dialogue with someone else, because I believe that dialogue is something which is pedagogically really, really useful and can engage student learning in this kind of video asynchronous online world.
Right, sounds really interesting. Ramin, we might pass back to you so you can explain in a bit more detail what you do. And I guess both of you are sort of emphasizing that you record your own things, but if you use any external sources as well, it might be worth mentioning. So Ramin, do you want to share your slides?
Yep, absolutely. So basically, just bear with me for a moment. So I'm going to talk about the focus. Yep, hello, that's me, everyone. Yep. So I'm going to talk about the focus of my videos. The focus here is the video tutorials that I've recently produced for Core Econ. The focus of these models, I think, which is relevant to many of you, is particularly textbook. Let me shrink myself. Whoop. So the focus of these are entirely on textbook models, creating videos to explain textbook models. So it's pretty much confined, and probably it's the most videos that many of us will produce to focus on one thing, to explain one model in detail in a modular way. We're talking about producing a 3 to 5 minute video. And these videos are already uploaded online on YouTube. But let me tell you the philosophy behind them. This is the usual way that we kind of fit the videos about explaining model in our overall pedagogy. We first ask the students to read the textbook, the big picture. Then we try to motivate them about the topic. We motivate them by a podcast or a short video or a piece of evidence. Then we relate that topic to a piece of evidence, a real world example that could be a data, that could be a case study. And then finally, we fit the model. Let's get into the serious stuff. Let me explain the serious stuff. What's the problem with this approach is that the whole explanation of the model is kind of insulated, kind of isolated from these other activities. So what's my innovation? If I have to put it on one slide, that would be it. That I pretty much incorporate my video explaining the model with all these other things. So there is a back and forth between while I'm explaining my model and relating it to the real world example. There is a back and forth between the model that I'm explaining and other content in the textbook. There is a back and forth with a wider motivation of that topic. So it's pretty much incorporated. It is a holistic view of approaching explaining the model. Now, why video? Because if I want to get very philosophical, you can manipulate time by editing in the video. So you can go back and forth between the model and the real world example seamlessly by editing your video. You can go back and forth in the textbook, relating this chapter to the other chapter and go back. And that's basically the advantage of video. You probably wouldn't have that effect when you're explaining a model live in a lecture. So doing it pre-recorded allows you, the editing allows you to go with all these back and forth. I will show you some examples throughout the seminar. I'll try to show you 2 examples about how editing really does its magic. So that's the first thing. The editing helps you with the back and forth. There's another thing about videos, the pre-recorded videos, and that's authenticity. This is a picture from Big Brother. There's something about videos. You could do it in an authentic way, and it helps you to build a lasting connection with your students. You become essentially friends. You become like a podcast they keep listening to on and on and on. So these are the 2 things that I'm going to relate to. Editing allows you to go back and forth through all these things, incorporate the explaining model in the big picture, and authenticity. That's it for me now. I'll show you with more examples.
Stay where you are a minute, because we've had a question about how you're doing what you're doing, as in how you're putting yourself in the corner and showing your background like that.
It's a feature on Zoom. I can just enlarge myself. I can do magic. Boop, and then come back, and that really I can explain to you later on, but we could post a link to how to do this. You can do this on Zoom, by the way. You just need a green screen and the Zoom.
Great,
that's it for me now.
Christian, do you want to explain a bit more about what you do?
Yeah, love to do that. So I'm just sharing
yeah, we can see that.
A few pictures as well. So what I'm talking about is mainly work I've done in 2 units. The first unit is a unit about data literacy for non-economists. It's an open unit which I'm running in Bristol, and I'm running that together with Alvin Birdie. And this is one of the setups when that's basically a shot from one of our videos. And then the second one is the introductory economics course here at Bristol, and I'm running that together with Annika Johnson. And you already see, so in both of those pictures, there are two people. And that is kind of what I want to talk about today. So it's all about dialogue and how we can use dialogue in videos to make learning actually happening. So in the title, we talked about asynchronous material which are engaging and or which engage students to learn. So three parts of it: asynchronous. So I'm talking about videos which I'm pre-recording with others and then put them up. And to be honest, I think there's always a question: how different is a video, an asynchronous resource, from a synchronous resource? And in the kind of videos I'm talking about today, actually there are not that many differences. So I'm very much running almost like a synchronous short webinar and use that as the video which I'm using as a learning resource. One big difference is that the synchronous session, the webinar, would be much longer. So to be engaging in my videos, I think it's absolutely important to have a shorter time frame in mind, to really focus on one or two things, and that's it. So it's much shorter. And when we think about engaging students with the video, I think there are two types of videos. So there are these kind of motivational videos where you might film yourself outside and take the students with you out into the world and talk about the world. These are incredibly labor intensive, and it's really hard to I'm spending a lot of time if I use those kind of videos to create resources. But then engaging can also be just by being part of a conversation, being part of dialogue. And I think that is something which is much easier to do, because all you need is a Zoom call, and or if the situation allows, being in the same room and have a chat and film yourself. So facilitating learning, this is my point. Why do I think that these kind of videos, so not just the labor intensive one, but also these discussions or these videos using dialogue, why do I think that these can facilitate learning? So I believe that a dialogue is really beneficial for the student, because what you can do is you can take the student through a conversation, through a thought which goes forward and back. And I think that is something really important. So what I think it does using dialogue is also that you can take on different roles in a very easy way. So in the way, and I have a couple of more pictures, if I'm recording myself in a dialogue, I or whoever I'm working with might take on the role of a student and ask certain questions. So and that may help the listener, the student who watches the video, to actually identify with one of the characters or the people in the video, in the film, and it will be easier to follow the thought process. So same with Annika. So it's just possible to explain certain things to the other person, and you can do that like in those pictures as just by talking. But when it works really well, I think it's if you share other resources. So in our data focus course, it's very much Excel based. We are basically going through an Excel spreadsheet and talking here about inequality and creating Lorentz curves for different parts of Bristol. And we do that in a conversation. So I can ask questions, or Alvin could ask questions, clarifications, and that just slows the whole process down. And in a way, as Ramin said, we are also playing with time here a bit. I believe it's very good in these videos, also in the dialogue, if you're creating something together. So if you're actually developing something, again, time, very important, right? So you develop a theory, you develop an idea, you take the student through an idea together. And I think that's what works very well. So annotating these kind of things works well and creates or makes for effective student learning.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Ramin.
I wanted to add, Christian, something very similar that we did. So we did a role play for explaining one of our models as well. So so usually when we're explaining the model is one person going through, this all-knowing person explaining everything. But we did a very similar thing. We did a role play. So I'm going to show you a small video. But before that, let me give you the context. So we are explaining a labor model with 3 characters. And the labor model is in the book. So we're not explaining our models separately. I'm going to show you in a minute. So we will go inside the book, and there are 3 characters. And one is me. I'm the core textbook, which is explaining the model. And we have 2 other characters, a one worker and a one landowner. So I'm going to show you the video. So it might be glitchy, but you get the overall idea of how it's like. So bear with me. So this is the role play example. Yeah.
Angela, what are you going to do now that you have democratic rights?
Well, I think what I'm going to do is to organize with some fellow farm workers and to lobby politicians. We now have the right to do that, to shorten working hours. So that's our idea.
So you propose a legislation to shorten the working hours to how many?
To 4 hours.
And receive the same pay as before, yes?
Yes, that's absolutely the idea, yeah.
Very good. How do you feel about this, Bruno?
Well, I must respect the law, so I must accept what Angela, her co-workers, and the union have decided. So I will accept that they will work for 4 hours and they will get 4.5 bushels of grain.
30 more seconds.
Well, okay, Bruno. Okay, I can see your point. So yeah, I would be happy to pay you a bit more rent than 2. So, a bit over 2 bushels. And then you'd definitely be better off than you were originally at F. So that sounds to me like a good deal for both of us.
Yes, it is. If you're happy to work a little bit more and you are willing to give me that little bit extra, I'm perfectly fine with this deal.
So seeing this from outside, are you both happy to meet somewhere between G and H?
So Ramin, can I ask you a question about these?
We can make a deal there.
Yes.
Yep.
So you mentioned earlier that you were, forming a relationship with the students by making videos, which kind of runs counter to all the criticism of education moving online and the poor university students aren't getting to meet their lecturers. Can you talk a little bit more about why you think, I mean, this may be a generational thing, but I don't think I make friends with people by listening to a podcast.
Exactly. Let me go back to the video I showed you. Again, back to those 2 themes, authenticity. I mean, the role plays and the level of authenticity you get in the video, you don't get it in your lecture. It's very difficult to do such a thing in a physical lecture, to do such a role play. So in that aspect, it's more authentic. It's not an overproduced video. If you want, I'm not trying to compete with Marginal Revolution here, right? That reduces the authenticity. This is very authentic. So the role play makes it authentic. There are other aspects that make it authentic. You can show a lot of stuff when you are doing a video. For instance, when you were giving an example about iPhone, you could just show your iPhone and talk about it. It's not as effective as it's much more effective compared to the physical lecture setting. So that's one thing. Let me add one other thing. So that was the authenticity. Again, going back to the editing. The good thing about editing, if you remember, the payoffs, I introduced numbers at some stage, numbers appeared and disappeared. That's the magic of editing. You can make things appear at the right time, and more importantly, make things disappear at the right time with editing.
And
So
Christian, we have
maybe I could just add to that, actually. I like that. So I think one other thing where you can form a relationship is through referring for and back to different videos and questions you got, or what happens in between the videos. So it depends a little bit. Like sometimes you might say, oh, I do this video and I want to use it for the next 5 years. That's much harder. And if you do something with very much high production value, takes a long time, then it's much harder to actually get a relationship with your students. But if it's a short dialogue, a short conversation where you pick something up, which maybe with some questions on the discussion board and you refer to that, then actually by doing that, you're creating a relationship even through a video. And I think that's something we should use videos for as well in this time.
And do you,
if I wanted to add, sorry, Clodagh. Yeah.
sorry, I was just going to ask Christian a quick question and then we'll get back to you, Ramin. Christian, when you do the dialogue type of thing, do you stop and re-record, or do you edit at the end to make them shorter? How do you do that? Do you do much editing on the dialogue type videos?
So mostly not, no. We're basically recording them, and that's the video. I mean, if there is something which went wrong, or if there is a little gap because of some technical issues to load something, then you can quickly cut this out. But in general, we do that in one go. But I think what is important as a little tip, it's important to have a bit of a plan. So I mean, that's also important for a live session and a lecture, right? You should know what you want to talk about. But I think on the video, it's even more important to have a structure. And I think it, again, links to time. In a lecture room, a short break is not so weird, right? Students can just look around and do other things a little bit. But online, in a video, things need to be tighter. That doesn't mean you have to write a full script. That doesn't mean you have to re-record it again and again, but it just means you should agree in the dialogue on a structure. And in that way, it's a little bit more staged and it's a little bit preparation just before.
Thank you. Ramin, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, the point that we don't realize as lecturers is that in a physical lecture, there's no button to stop us or fast forward us, but in the video there is. And we need to change that mindset. We need to have this in mind. We're producing a video. People can walk off from our lecture. They can fast forward us. So that was my point. And yes, go on.
So I was also, so it's probably a good, have you had I mean, I guess yours are quite new, Ramin. Have you had feedback from anybody who's used them in the States, for example? So a bit earlier than the UK yet, on how the videos have been.
No, but I'm very keen. This is an ongoing process. What I'm going to do more is to increase the authenticity more in the future. That's my plan. Breaking the fourth wall, for instance, let's say when I am explaining the consumer surplus, I turn to the students and say, have you ever purchased something that you secretly were willing to pay higher price than that? That was a consumer surplus going to you. So I try to make it more authentic rather than, doing a video, an isolated instance. So this is kind of an ongoing process. I'm learning as I'm doing.
Yeah.
But the whole point is to have this back and forth, not having it a kind of an isolated thing like, Khan Academy. There are already good videos on the models, an isolated one. The point is to connect it to the other things you're doing.
And I think if I can just add, I think that's exactly the part where we should create videos. It's the connection of the dots, right? I mean, there are tons of resources out there. There are great resources out there. I'm using other resources in my teaching, for example, Ramin's resources, right? Because they're brilliant. And but then there are certain things where I, as the lecturer and the person the students know, and they know that I'm leading them through this learning journey, where I really can add something. And I think that is where I should step in and where I should record videos.
And have you had feedback from students, Christian, because you've been doing it a bit longer?
Yeah, so I think one of the big advantages of videos is that, as Ramin said, students can stop and they can go over certain things again, and I think that's really important. And many students say that it helps their learning, and they can engage more and learn more efficient than going through a complex or complicated model in a live lecture. So our students are heterogeneous, they're different pre-knowledge, and I think we can use videos to kind of create a level playing field and then build on that in a more exciting and more engaging way and make learning happen.
Great. So Ramin, Christian mentioned earlier about, different ways of recording videos, and he made me remember the time that he and I walked down the Tottenham Court Road and he recorded me standing outside the HSBC about a money and banking module. And I think we both agree that the background noise and the buses and the video quality did not help the situation very much. So you've obviously done a lot of thinking about what makes a good quality video, as I'm sure Christian has. Any sort of ideas for people about how to make the video really work well, how to make it as engaging as possible for the students?
First golden rule, get it out. When you produce something, you're not happy with it, just release it. You'll get better and better. If you go look at the videos, my first core video, I hate it now. It doesn't sound good. It's like, but it's going to get better and better. The trick is to just get it out, release it. You'll get better and better. That's it. First one. The second one is that there is an empty space in the market, I think. On the one hand, you got overproduced videos, by Marginal Revolution, and you need 10,000 pounds of equipment for that, at least, right? And one person helping you out. And on the other hand is a Khan Academy, a person, a voice, and just a blackboard, right? It's kind of very isolated, no real world example, no motivation, not that. I think there is a space in between that we can feel with, a lecturer can feel with just a little bit knowledge of editing and video recording. So you basically, my equipment is this 50-pound microphone. Yeah. Of course, you can get better and better. A Camtasia, 100 pounds editing, and then that's it. So you can begin by that, and banks of footages that you can cut in and out. So later on, I might show an example of that. So I think to summarize, there is this room in between and we can fit it out, but we just need to be a little bit courageous and release the first videos we produce.
Do you think people are getting better at it because we're online?
Absolutely, I think. Absolutely.
So I think, how much work is involved, Christian? So compared to going into a lecture room for an hour, recording a 30-minute video.
I mean, it relates a little bit to what Ramin said, right? It really depends how much, how overproduce your video. I mean, you can spend a whole week on producing 10 minutes, and I wouldn't advise to do that. I think we can reduce the workload a lot by having a plan, having a structure before we actually record. And that is the better strategy than just re-recording again and again and thinking, this wasn't so great. So having a clear structure and then just going on with it is fine. And Ramin talked about authenticity. I think it's totally fine, especially in a conversation, actually. If there is if you kind of say, start the sentence again, just like I did now, right? That's not a drama. And I think we can use that, especially if we work with another person in a dialogue, a lot, and we get away with much more. And that I think is an advantage of dialogue as well. I think if you're the only one and just go through a model and explain something and talk, it's harder to get away with mistakes, or if you kind of go off in the wrong direction. In a dialogue, in a conversation, that's kind of something which is normal. I do think it is it is more work maybe than preparing a normal lecture or a seminar, because most of us are not used to the technology. And again, as Ramin said, you get better and better. And I think that's when things get a bit quicker. My suggestion generally is, like, think about your equipment, what you need. I actually think sound is almost more important, even for a video. It sounds a bit strange, but even for a video, sound is more important than the video itself. It's just very painful to listen to something which is of really bad sound quality or not clear. So I think that's more important. Than the actual video quality. So get your, I would say, get your equipment, set it up, think precisely about what's the structure, what's the narrative of your video, and then get going. And I think that reduces a lot of workload.
And this can be either of you, but so I, 1 year in a kind of industrial economics type course, pre-recorded all the kind of derivations of models, so the Cornell model, and the students complain that, so they had to watch that in advance, and then we still have the same length lecture in the classroom where we were kind of talking about the results and applying them, and they saw that as extra work and wanted to know if essentially which bit's in the assessment, which bit matters. Do they see your dialogue as being part of the core material or something nice to have, or do you have any sense of that?
So I really think it depends how you embed it in your overall teaching. So the alignment, embedding, what is the resource for, and not just, oh, it's a nice thing which we produce for the students. Like having a pedagogical vision, why it needs to be part of your teaching. And if you have that vision, you also know where it should go. Should it go at the very beginning? Should it go at the end as a summary? And then communicating that to students as well. Why you're using the video and what students should do with it and follow up on it. I think that helps us to clarify to students that this is an essential part of the actual learning materials.
Ramin, can I ask you a similar question? So I'm teaching Unit 3 of Core in a couple of weeks, and like Christian, we'll be using your video. So how would you recommend I explain to students why they should look at your video as well as the book rather than instead of the book as a kind of complementary thing?
I think it adds to it. Basically, what I've tried to do, as Christian was saying, that in the book, going back and forth is very difficult. In a website, you say, by the way, this model is related to that model, right? Go see this section. That's very difficult. But the added value of a video is that once you're explaining a model in Unit 3, you can immediately relate it to the model that was discussed before, to the topic that was discussed before through editing. So going back and forth, making the connection is much more easier, and you can add to it as well. I can show you an example, let's say.
Sure.
So it would be, again, magic of editing. Here, let me give you the context. It's a 1-minute video. So I'm explaining a technology model. The trouble is that once we are talking about a technology model, it's very difficult to visualize it at the same time. So here I'm trying to put flesh on one of the models. So if yeah.
That technology here is represented by B, which is a relatively labor-intensive technology. You need 4 workers and only 2 tons of coal to run this technology. This technology made sense because the price of labor was relatively low at that time. As you can see, it didn't make sense for Britain to move from technology B to technology A, which is a more energy-intensive technology. To replace labor had an incentive to automate. Why? Because the cost of labor was increasing. Therefore, it had an incentive to move away from this labor-intensive technology towards a more energy-intensive one. It had an incentive to invent new.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah. So basically, that's one aspect of it. You can edit in and out exactly the time. So this is the textbook. I'm editing the examples in there. So let me just fast forward. So finally, I'll give a bigger picture. It's not just a model. So when I finish explaining the model, I do this.
Across lines and technology useful to think about the next industrial revolution. Everybody is talking about the upcoming artificial intelligence revolution thanks to the advancements in big data and computer sciences. Everyone is excited about driverless cars.
So I connect, in the end, I go from the model to the wider debates. So this is the back and forth, the magic of editing, which I think you cannot have in the real-time lecture explanation of models. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, well, when you do try to do it, it can take a lot more time in the lecture than you expect, and then you get sort of behind and stuff. We had a question come in from the people who registered in advance about whether you think this works better with small or large audiences. Do you think it makes any difference what size class you're teaching with these kind of videos?
Christian, would you like to comment?
I can start. Yeah. So I think it depends. So you could, if I reach out to a small group, I think I reach out to it with potentially with a slightly different video. And the reason again is that I might have a relationship with that small group. I know maybe those 20 people because in a Zoom call, we all had our videos on. So what I can do in my video or in the dialogue, which I'm recording, is I can refer much more easily to some of the discussions we had, and some of the stuff might be much more informal, what I'm recording. If I'm reaching out to 400 students, I do not know them. And I think that's the biggest difference, that I might think of a video which is targeted to 400 students, less at, oh, I catch up on this, or I got this question, or last time we discussed this or that. So maybe that's the main difference. But I think dialogue works for both. But with the small group, I think it's good to get some of the ideas which come out from the group into the video.
I mean, the videos you're recording are obviously part of core, so like a potentially very mixed student base. So there can people who take core all over the world. Some have, more advanced economics than others. Did you consider that at all when you were recording them?
Yes, over time, for instance, I target the lower middle for the videos, but I always try to leave something to think about for the top, for the top students, like something difficult. I try to end up with a question. Yeah,
okay. So there's some sort of differentiation there that you can take what you want from them. And kind of related to that, have you thought about whether you can embed activities into the videos or create activities to be done after watching the video, that kind of thing?
That's the next step. I think Christian has been doing this for a while to make it more interactive. So that would be the next step of this.
So I think it's one possibility, right, to have quizzes within the video and kind of make it a full learning experience of 1 hour, which is broken down. I think that is a possibility. I'm not sure if that's a must, if we necessarily have to go that route, because I think recording small pieces, chunks, and then put something else in between, a different activity, makes it also potentially a little bit more varied, because the activities which you can do within a video, that they're more limited. It's harder to kind of say, okay, now go off and read this article and then post something on and talk to your peers. So even though it looks very, very sleek and nice, I'm not sure if that's necessarily what we need to do to make learning happen.
So I was having, one of the things I've done for my regulation course this year is I've done a dialogue with people who work in the regulators. So I've done interviews with them. And one of the ways I'm trying to think about how do I make sure the students see this as part of the course is to kind of have a discussion forum question after the video. So not in the video, but sort of having watched that video, essentially what did you learn from it, but some sort of specific question. So I think designing an activity linked to it rather than in it can be probably just as effective potentially.
Absolutely.
I think. The sort of going back to the kind of the ideal video, Ramin, I remember you sat me down virtually and, you know, explained I must look at the camera and those kind of things. Have you got any other sort of practical tips like that for people?
Let me put it this way. First of all, in terms of content, let me just focus on explaining the models. I think what an ideal video explanation of a model is with lots of back and forth. So you give a bigger picture, go to the model, go to the evidence, go to the model, a lot of back and forth, and end with something, perhaps something to think about, a curious question about the real world. So that's in terms of content. In terms of format, it's really up to you. It depends on what you want to do, to be honest. It depends on what you want. In some videos, let's say, let me give you some example. When I am explaining a labor market in core, which does not clear, by the way, is because of efficiency wages. So there is a long intro at the beginning. I start to show myself in the green screen to make this connection because nothing is happening. So I need to make this connection. So I start talking about efficiency wages. The boss cannot monitor the workers very perfectly. Then I edit some stuff from cinema. You know, I show picture of Charlie Chaplin from modern times working on an assembly line and being monitored by the boss. So basically, depending on the model that I'm explaining, I use these different mediums. Popular culture, I show myself, or if I'm just focusing on the model, you know, I don't show myself, I don't do anything, I just explain the model.
So only make yourself the priority when you want them to focus on you. Is the kind of,
or a big intro, yeah.
So there's some discussion in the chat about sound again, and the fact that, you know, think of the student sitting on the tube, or hopefully not on the tube these days, but wherever they're sitting with watching something on their phone. What do you think of the idea of recording videos without any sound at all? So let me give you an example. When we had some interns working in the summer, whenever we asked them to record something about how to do something in Moodle, they always recorded a silent video, which was just a kind of how-to that said, you know, you press this, but there was no sound. And I found them really useful because I had no distraction other than focusing on it. Do you think there's a place for that?
Absolutely. For how-tos, you know, look at our own experiences when we go to YouTube. We want to know how to upload it on Moodle. We click on a YouTube video, it says, today I'm going to explain to you how to upload, you know, you go to the next video. Right? Yeah. You end up choosing the video with no voice, goes to the heart of the matter and does the thing. So there's absolutely a place for it. I haven't found it yet, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to use it.
I think it's very small tasks or aspects or something mechanical which can be broken down in steps. I think that's where it works. I don't think it would work for a long discussion or an exploration.
Some sign language maybe. And Christian, do you get the students involved with the dialogues at all? Like, do they ever want to be the interviewer or be actually part of it?
So I have done that in podcasts, and I would like to do that much more in the videos as well. So I think the dialogue could be great with the student, or actually have the student explaining something, and maybe me asking the question or things like that. So I think it would be great to do that, and maybe this is the year to do it because we're recording many of these dialogues.
Can I add something, Clodagh? Because I actually do that, but I call it spotlight on students. So I turn the spotlight on them literally and start to interview them. And this year I did it for one of my courses. This is completely unrelated to what I've been talking so far about the core model. So I teach another course, economic history. So just to give an idea about the new students, I did an interview with past year students. So we did a Zoom interview, and I interviewed those past year students about their overall experience about the course. What did you like about it? How did you do the assessment? And I edited the video and uploaded it. And so the editing really adds value. Again, you do a 1 hour interview with your students, editing, you pick up the important bits, you add bullet points to what they're saying. This is very important. If I'm explaining something about my essay, I add a bullet point here later on. So to structure the video more analytically. So I think we're going to see this kind of videos more in the future, that the students will be the center of the interview.
Obviously, we're getting students increasingly to record their own videos. So this year, I mean, we obviously do the first year challenge, as does Bristol, where they record their videos. Now they've got the challenge of recording them on Zoom or some Teams or some equivalent. You mentioned the kind of bullet points and stuff. Ramin, how much do you think about accessibility of your videos when you're recording? So people are saying, you know, people watch them on different speeds, but obviously we have people looking for closed captions or transcripts and stuff. How important has that been to you making your videos?
Again, a learning process, to be frank. A learning process of, I still need to wait for the feedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Christian, any experience with that?
I mean, this is really where also I think it's a very important part, and that's where the workload implication comes in, because unfortunately some of the software which is available to do closed caption on a video is just very imperfect. Then sometimes your institution may also suggest you have to use this particular platform, which is not necessarily the best of all the platforms, and that just means if you really want to give this part justice, you have to go through your script again and change things, and this is a very long process, and I think we all need to find ways of making this more workable for everyone, and think of scripts and what can we give to make our videos more inclusive. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Ramin's video earlier about AI springs to mind. So definitely the automatic transcripts don't like my Irish accent at all. So this sort of relates to a question from Steffi on the chat as well about, most of us don't have any time now to edit videos. We're sort of doing everything. Probably we all thought we were going to do this last June, but actually we're doing it 2 days before the lecture, or before we said we promised to give them the materials. If you were to sort of boil it down to 2 things that people really should focus on if they haven't got much time, what would you recommend?
Focus on what? Sorry, on what stage? Post-production, pre-production?
The whole thing. So it's Monday and I've said I'm going to put my async materials up on Wednesday and I haven't done anything yet. What are the 2 most important things that I should concentrate on in those? Should I spend more time on the editing and less time on the recording, or vice versa?
Always my pre-production stage. Pre-production, 90% is the pre-production stage. If you just prepare something overall, an overall structure, your life is much, much easier in the other stages. So you won't regret spending time on pre-production.
Christian, anything to add to that?
I would agree. So write a good storyboard and get someone on a Zoom call and have a good conversation about your model or about what you want to teach, and record that, and then it's ready to go.
So I'd add one more tip, which is what both Christian and Ramin have been emphasizing, which is if you make a mistake, I would say don't worry about it. It's life. And I think students understanding that is quite important from a sort of employability perspective, that, you know, good enough can sometimes be good enough and it doesn't have to be perfect all the time. So I certainly was recording some things on a visualizer the other day, and you know, was running out of time, and it wasn't the straightest demand curve I've ever drawn in my life, and I could have stopped and redone it, but you just kind of go, oh, my drawing's not great, which is exactly what I would have used to have said in the classroom. So I think sort of remembering this is replicating something that you used to do in the classroom in many cases, and it was never perfect then. So I think that's good enough. Christian, a question about whether you have any particular way that you prepare your storyboards, or any, you know, do you have a software to do it for you?
No, I mean, paper, paper does it. Yeah, I don't think software is needed. So when I say storyboard, it's really about being clear about the narrative. So what's the narrative structure of my conversation, of my video? That's the most important thing. So this is much more bullet points about the stages, where I want to spend more time, what should be really short, no drawing required.
Thank you. I mean, you might not have noticed this, people, but Christian and Ramin and I did also have a storyboard for this ready to go. And I keep taking them off storyboard. Yeah, I agree with Parama that when I make mistakes, I should probably correct them and tell them that I'm correcting them and make that a learning experience. Ramin, we've got about 5 minutes left, but there's a request for you to show us how to use your green screen and the picture in Zoom. I'm not sure what the best way for you to do that is. Whether you can,
one of those silent videos that I could record and share later on.
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe on the CTEL YouTube channel, we have a how-to series on this YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So I have a green screen still in its packaging. So if you can explain how to open it and put it up, that would be useful.
Look,
too.
it's the easiest thing. You know, it's the easiest thing. So you just need to put it up and then turn your Zoom on and just say to your Zoom, there's a button. I have a green screen. That's it. Nothing else.
Do that.
So I will record one of those silent short videos that don't have any intro. I'm going to explain this, and I just show it, you know, in a silent mode, and we'll post it on CTEL YouTube channel.
Right, and it's also worth mentioning that the video Ramin mentioned earlier about interviewing his economic history students is also on the YouTube channel. I think in relation to the Economics Network Symposium materials, it's probably in there. We have 5 minutes to go. Any other questions? Anyone want to unmute and ask a question to the guys? Or anyone want to share their own experiences with videos?
Abdullah.
Abdullah's not happy with his sound, apparently. Is that the US sound system rather than the Oman sound system, Abdullah?
Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for whoever recommended me, but yeah, sound, I'm always critical of it. And we say not to shoot for perfection, but that's one thing that I can't get over it. So if you have any advice on microphones, I've tweaked everything. I just moved into a new space. So, soundproofing it is something that's on my list because I hear the echo. But once again, probably me being more critical than my students are.
Yeah, I have to say, I haven't found any issues with yours, but we're always more critical of ourselves, I think.
Thank you.
But I think it's a good point, right? Like thinking about where to record, because the microphone is important, but then it doesn't have to be an incredibly expensive one. It just like a little bit more than your standard computer audio. But then where we record and how much like feedback and extra noise there is, I think that's something to consider. So walk through your house, find the right place.
Also, I mean, obviously, when you sing in a choir, you think about this all the time, presumably when you're performing a concert. So it must be something that's, so somebody has planes flying overhead. So that's always good for, keep your windows closed, Parama, I think springs to mind, and plug in your headset. But yeah, I think finding the right space is important. And I think, I guess the message from all of this is it takes learning and practice. So try one room, then try another, try outside, maybe even brave going to your office and trying it. So yeah, I think everyone experimenting is what this is all about, I guess. But as Ramin said, don't be afraid to share it and get some feedback. And that's probably how you'll learn. Simon, did you want to add something?
I was just going to add, so I teach very math heavy courses typically. And so I think as I've chatted with a couple of people here about using light boards. And so like I made one. You can do it as a pretty easy DIY project. And there are even folks, I haven't tested this yet, but I'm going to be testing it in a couple of weeks, where with OBS and Zoom, you can basically set it up so that you can do it live. So I have not tested that yet. I've typically used the Lightboard for doing mathematical examples for stuff in intermediate microeconomics and for stuff that is like more advanced in behavioral economics.
Yeah.
But if you're doing math heavy courses, I recommend something like that, and it's not super expensive.
Yeah, we have a game theory lecturer who's built his own as well, and he looks fantastic on it. So I think anybody out there who's better at DIY than me, Simon and Nikita in UCL are the men to give you the instructions.
And I guess it again makes an important point. It's actually important for the student to see the instructor, right? Because with the Lightboard, that's kind of what we achieve. And if we share our screen, then at least making sure that there is somewhere a picture of us is actually quite important. I mean, if we use OBS or vMix or something, we can do all sorts of things, and that's great. It's a bit more techy. But bringing ourselves into the video, I think is important for the learning. And my theory is it's basically because we are creating a relationship, even though there is a video. And for that, it's actually good to be part of it.
Absolutely. And that seems like a very good note to say thank you to you, Christian, and to Ramin for being part of this, and to everybody for joining in. Feedback on the chat is really good. Thank you to everyone on YouTube for joining us as well. The session will be shared on the YouTube channel as soon as it's processed, which is also the other thing to watch with video making, allow for the processing time, I've realized, when you upload it somewhere. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. We will be launching our Teach eConference 2021 call for papers very shortly. So keep an eye out for that on the CTEL website. And for information about the next set of seminars, I think we're going to have a couple of weeks to settle into term, and then we'll start the every 2 weeks again.
We're still alive by the end of it.
We'll be alive. We might look a bit older, but we'll be alive.
Yeah, I'm not sure saying being alive during a pandemic is something that you really want to be saying too much, but yeah, that's...
We'll be grayer. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.